Plague Tale Requiem reunites players with Amicia and her younger brother Hugo. Through exploration, puzzles, and stealth gameplay, the siblings are tested by cults, mercenaries, themselves, and of course, rats, as they search for a cure for Hugo's mysterious blood disease and deal with the emotional trauma of their decisions. The focus on trauma is no coincidence. In fact, it was a main focus for developer Asobo Studio in response to a Plague Tale Innocence that first exposed Amicia and Hugo to attempts on their life and the scourge of plagued rats. In an era of gaming where lethality is often glorified and even rewarded, Requiem is the developer's exploration of the trauma caused by violence and the effect of that shared trauma on Amicia and Hugo, as well as their relationship and how they overcome the obstacles they face.
I can't. You have to handle it yourself. Are you sure? Do it. Quick.
The task for developers was to figure out ways to make Amicia and Hugo's struggle with violent trauma an integral part of the game design. Requiem is, at its core, a stealth game, and stealth games are all about balancing risk. Amicia can easily be overwhelmed by enemies, making avoidance key, and unlike games where players are encouraged to defeat enemies, sometimes as brutally as possible, stealth games like Requiem force players to ask, is confrontation worth the risk? Players are given alternative options to confrontation, such as distraction, in order to progress in the game. And while the humanization of enemy NPCs is always a difficult task for developers, sometimes the feeling of danger and self-preservation are enough to make players think twice before going in crossbow ablaze. Games like the Assassin's Creed series are an example of the opposite approach. Earlier games focused more on stealth, making the player more vulnerable, while more modern adaptations focused on high body counts and combat. Requiem, like Assassin's Creed, does provide Amicia with more combat options, but as Amicia becomes more adept in combat, the weight of her lethal actions begin to traumatize her mental state, with Amicia becoming prone to mood swings and violent outbursts.
Let me pass!
Traditionally, cutscenes in games provide a quick and relatable way to illustrate character growth. Games, however, are interactive, and character growth must also happen through the player. Gameplay mechanics like experience points or progression systems offer a way to gamify that growth for the player. To reflect the impact of player choice with Amicia's emotional struggle, developers designed a progression system where the decisions and actions of players impact what skills and abilities become available for Amicia. Much like Skyrim's level system, players that favor stealth, lethality, or alchemy are rewarded with more advanced skills within the respective skill set. This choice to mirror gameplay progression with character decision-making means players must also confront their gameplay choices. Their actions have a direct effect on their ability to navigate through the game in the same way Amicia's decisions affect her mental state and her relationship with her younger brother.
I don't know what's happening to me, Lucas. I feel my mind going.
Now imagine that instead, a system with XP points that could be spent freely had been implemented. Character progression would not reflect the developer's focus on how decisions can cause lasting effects, and would have ultimately severed the connection they are trying to make with the player and the trauma of the two main characters. The connection between Amicia and Hugo is also an important one, and in Requiem, players have more options as Hugo begins to grapple with his ability to control the rat horde. Mid-game players are introduced to Hugo's ability to control the plague of rats and use them to devour hostile enemies. While, narratively, this ability eventually has a profound effect on Hugo, giving players an easy way to simply get rid of enemies needed to be addressed by the developers. Shortly after receiving this ability, the strain on Hugo is gamified by the introduction of a stress meter. This meter means players must manage their use of the rat horde or cause Hugo to seize up, as he is overwhelmed by the trauma caused by the ability. This could have also been done with a simple timer that would reset, allowing the player to reuse the ability. But developers needed there to be consequence for its overuse, because Hugo's power is traumatic, for him and for Amicia. If players overuse this ability, Hugo loses control and gives in to the macula. making the game much more difficult. Arguably, the most dramatic example of connecting players to the trauma of events in Requiem lies in the game's ending. With Hugo overcome by the macula, players are presented with the choice to kill Amicia's brother to stop the Red Horde.
I'm sorry, but you're ready now. To save everything.
Ready? How can I be ready for this?
While this could have been presented in a cutscene, players are forced to take the final shot themselves. This also forces the player to live through the traumatic decision to destroy what they and Amicia have been fighting to protect for the entire game. Requiem developers even foresaw how difficult the decision might be for players and included a secret ending where Lucas takes the shot if the player hesitates for too long.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
The emotional effect is chilling. Perhaps one final game design decision by the developers to make players feel the trauma through the eyes of Amicia. Developers can manipulate the feelings of players in many ways, including feelings of accomplishment. For example, be sure to check out why the developers of Elden Ring did not include an easy mode. Thanks for watching. A like and subscribe are always appreciated. Be sure to check out the Discord for more game dev conversations, and until next time, go create something awesome.